Great news, everyone. Jim Rutherford spoke again. Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to the episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. My name is Dave Quadrelli. I am joined by Harman Dial. The last time you heard from us, on Tuesday, we were talking about what we were expecting to hear from Jim Rutherford. Do you know what I wasn't expecting to hear from Jim Rutherford, Harm?
What?
That he hopes Quinn Hughes is golfing and that the captain's not just ignoring his calls. Quinn Hughes was at the New York Knicks game. We saw that on his Instagram story later. But this was what Jim Rutherford had to say. Let's just get into it right away. Technical producer Jacob Lazar, we're putting him on the spot right away. The clip of Rutherford just saying, well, I hope he's golfing because Quinn Hughes isn't answering my calls, when he was asked about going and making the call to Quinn Hughes after he got off the phone with Rick Tocchet.
Would be with him wanting to stay.
Yeah, well, I hope he's playing golf because he usually returns my calls right away, and I called him within a half an hour after I talked to Rick. So he hasn't called me back yet. Knowing how he feels about the coach and that he's a sensitive guy, I would suspect that he feels like I do, that we're disappointed. But knowing the maturity of Quinn, he will make the adjustment necessary. But they did have a very strong relationship, a very good one. And Quinn had a lot of respect for him. And Talk had a lot of respect for Quinn. So there will definitely be an adjustment there.
Okay, so that's the one making the rounds. And let's get a little serious here. That's the one
before we get
the
serious, and knowing that he's a sensitive guy was crazy.
Well, I don't know.
I get what Rutherford's trying to say, but probably could have worded it in a more tactful way.
Yeah, fair. But I think we all get what he's trying to say. Like,
for sure. I'm not trying to make fun of what a terrible misstep. It's just funny worded like that.
I don't know. I saw a lot of criticism being directed at Jim Rutherford yesterday. I'm very, very firmly on Team Rutherford. I love when Jim Rutherford speaks, and not because he makes an ass of himself. That's not what I think at all about Jim Rutherford. I love the honesty. I think way more people should be as honest as Jim Rutherford are. Listen, this idea that he's honest to a fault. Okay, give me an example. He said he was going to get a practice facility done when he got here. He probably believed that when he said it. Like, give me another example of Jim Rutherford. A huge stepped in it moment. Like, yeah, maybe the Quinn Hughes brothers thing, but that was fun. It was a fun little thing that happened. I don't know. I really don't get the big deal about people being like, don't let Rutherford speak anymore. No, let him. He's honest, and he gets conversations going, sure, but I don't think he's done anything egregious in these press conferences.
He doesn't sugarcoat. That's the thing, and this is, I think,
we should want more of that. And
to be totally honest, part of why it comes off in a negative way is because the franchise is in a tough spot for a number of reasons. The uncertainty around Elias Pettersson, Tocchet leaving, Quinn Hughes' long-term future, the Tom Willander situation, which Rutherford provided some additional clarity on when I asked. For a number of reasons, there's a lot of, whether you want to call it dysfunction or question marks, pessimism, whatever word you want to use. There aren't a lot of positive storylines surrounding the Canucks right now. And so Rutherford is naturally fielding tougher questions. And because he is so honest and doesn't beat around the bush and isn't going to sugarcoat things, he often says the quiet part out loud, right? The part of last week when he discussed Quinn's future and discussed the possibility that some factors are going to be outside of their control. For example, if he wants to play with his brothers, which he's expressed in the past, he's just saying the quiet part out loud. Anybody who's critically thinking pretty much was able to put two and two together and know that that's a possibility, a threat. It's just that when he says it that prominently, then people outside of Vancouver also start talking about it as a possibility. And that's why I think, some fans feel like he ruffles too many feathers.
Yeah, that's fair. I like the honesty. I want more of it. I think we should want more of it, not just in pro sports, but all over the place. I think we should want that kind of honesty. I think it's great. Let's hear Rutherford's opening statement yesterday. Again, he opened with the news, obviously, that Rick Tocchet would not be returning to the Canucks.
I might need a second to find it because I've got them all downloaded in the back with weird titles. So just give me a minute.
Okay, Jacob's
And
gonna
to follow up, I would way rather have an executive like Rutherford who actually gives the fans answers, even if they're answers that the market maybe doesn't want to hear, rather than Alvin, who oftentimes he just tap dances around direct questions, speaks in platitudes, cliches. There isn't a lot of insight to be gleaned when Alvin speaks.
I don't even think it's a comparison. Like I say it all. What did I say at end of season media avails? I'm like, I don't know why anyone asked Alvin a question. You see him like 6 times throughout the year. You see Rutherford twice. You're gonna hear the same thing from Alvin every time he speaks, which is nothing. I don't know why anyone even asked Alvin a question. Just ask Rutherford the questions. It was so funny because yesterday, and we don't obviously we're not gonna play a clip of this, but one thing Rutherford said is, "Oh, like I'm sorry you guys get me instead of Patrick." Because he's on a flight to Dallas. It's like, you don't need to apologize, man. It's great to hear from you. It's great to hear from Jim Rutherford. I love it. It's great. It's great for content. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to say that in like I'm not trying to say that in a negative way at all, where it's like, oh, it's great content. It's just like, no, there's actual stuff and substance to chew on with what Rutherford says. And I like that. I like that. Okay, we've got the clip now. Sorry, I put Jacob on the spot there when we have like 100 clips. But this is Jim Rutherford's opening statement yesterday about the news of Rick Tocchet leaving the organization.
Disappointing news this morning. As you know by now, Rick Tocchet has decided not to return as the coach of the Vancouver Canucks. And it's a little bit surprising. We had a lot of talks over the last 4 to 6 weeks, and in those talks, it was sort of general talks like we would normally have at the end of each year, and he's talking about what he's going to do with the players in the summertime, what he wants to do different at camp, what he wants to do with the team next year. So for the most part, the talks were all about the future, and it appeared to me that he would return. And so we got to a point here within the last 4 or 5 days that we said, you know, we're going to have to bring this to a head as to what the future is, because one, if you're not returning, there's other teams looking for coaches. The Canucks have to go on with their business. And two, you have to prepare for what you're going to do with the players. And so anyways, I got the call this morning from his agent, and then a call right after from Rick explaining why he wouldn't return. I think you saw it in the press release, but he just expressed that he felt he needed a change, and part of that, for personal reasons, he wanted to move back to the eastern part of the United States and be closer to his family. And that's pretty much where it is at this point. But obviously we're very disappointed. We thank him greatly for the job he did here. He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and he always will be. And he's a very good coach, and he did a good job here. So we're very thankful for that.
I want to highlight one part of that, and it's the part where he said moving back to the Eastern United States was part of it, because there were some absolute goofballs on Twitter yesterday, even replying to the clips of us, our reaction to it yesterday, being like, oh, I don't think it's that deep, guys. I think it's pretty simple. He just wanted to go be with his family. Okay, don't give me the, oh, nothing to see here. Don't give me that, okay? I don't want to hear it. Highlighting that Rutherford said part of it is that he wanted to go back and see family. But the part I really look at there was he decided it was time for a change. And the Canucks, this was from Donnie and Dolly this morning, Dollywall saying 5x5 was what the Canucks offered, which really, again, we knew there was reports yesterday that it would have put him in the upper echelon of coaches and coaching salaries in the NHL. Is there a coach on a better contract than that? Like Berube's at 4 in Toronto. I don't know the term of it, but a 5x5, $25 million for a coach is significant.
It would have made him one of the highest paid coaches in the NHL. Sullivan was at 5.5, and he was, as far as we know publicly, the highest paid head coach in the NHL. Now, obviously, Sullivan will probably top that, and we may see coaching salaries further escalate. But the key there too is the Canucks offer wasn't just high on the annual salary, but the term too. 5 years of term is a long time in a world where coaches,
this team, This team, they don't keep coaches for more than 2 years.
Exactly. And if the Canucks had stumbled next season as well, and Tocchet had been responsible, this entire market would have been clamoring for a coaching change. So it's possible that they would have been forced to, if next year went sideways, to fire Tocchet with 4 additional years left on his contract. So you can't criticize the organization at all as far as not stepping up from a monetary perspective.
But you can criticize the organization for a whole bunch of other things that play into this decision. And look, like Frank Saravalli, friend of the show, he was on Halford and Bruff this morning. He just said it flat out. It's like word spreads around the league, and this is one of the most dysfunctional organizations in the league. And that there was a ton of chaos this year. We know all about that. But let's not act like this is just a one-year thing that, oh my gosh, all this stuff went wrong. Like, we know it's been over a decade here. And look, a lot of people are pointing it out. You're going to see it in our poll question. I asked about a change in management, and the number one thing I saw was people like, can we trade the owners? Can we trade ownership? And that was the number one reply we got, was people just being like, no, it's not, new management's not going to fix it. And we're going to get to the poll question in a sec. Jeff Paterson's going to join us before that. We'll get to that later. But there is a wealth of other things that play into this. And kudos to the Canucks for bucking up for Rick Tocchet. But I don't know, like, people are also saying in the chat right now that I think that actually makes them look worse, that they were willing to buck up. And Tocchet was like, thanks, but no thanks to $25 million. Like, Tocchet really wants to win. And I don't know, man. I look at that, and don't forget at his year-end press conference, he talked about a lunch with Quinn Hughes, how he went out and got lunch with Quinn Hughes. I'm sure part of that conversation was, how are you feeling about the Canucks right now? Like, you think you're going to be here long term? And look, I'm not trying to sit here and speculate and say, oh, Quinn told him, nope, I'm out of here. But I'm going to guess right now that Quinn Hughes isn't super committal to the idea of like, yeah, as soon as I can, I'm signing an 8-year contract in Vancouver.
Yeah, and put yourself in Quinn's shoes. Why would you be? You'd need to see proof that the organization is actually not only moving in the right direction as far as on-ice success, but that there's a level of stability to actually sustain it, right? Because we've seen with this group, this franchise, that they can win 4 stretches, like all of last season, but also the 2020 bubble, where they went around in the playoffs. When Bruce Boudreau first took over and they went on that second half tear, nearly made the playoffs, and there was a lot of optimism around, okay, could Boudreau be the one to help this team get to the next level? The issue has always been when they find that first taste of success, for whatever reason, they're not able to sustain it, carry it forward. And so even from that perspective of, convincing Quinn to stay, it isn't just as simple as a stretch of winning or even one season of winning. It's top to bottom. There needs to be a level of stability and confidence that not only can we find success, but actually keep it and be a contender year in and year out. And by that measuring stick, this franchise isn't there yet.
Now, Patrick Johnson was on the show yesterday. For those of you who didn't hear yesterday's episode, make sure you go listen to it. It was a really good one. One thing he talked about was the turnover in this organization. And Jeff Paterson wrote about this over at Canucks Army as well. J-Pat's going to join us soon. He wrote about this over at Canucks Army, and it's not just like the hockey side. It is, you obviously you have your coaches, you have different people throughout the years, but you also have the behind the scenes staff, right? Like, there's been people that were here for a year, really good people that looked at it and said, okay, no, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, there's bigger problems in this organization than people, I think, really think about off the top of their head. Rutherford acknowledges that 4 coaches in 4 years isn't ideal. Made sure to mention he only hired one of them. Technically, he'll hire the 4th. But anyways, this was the clip of Rutherford yesterday being asked about that lack of stability.
It's difficult for the guys that have been here. Of course, we made a lot of changes, so everybody hasn't been under 4 coaches. I will make the point that I only hired one of them, so they're not all my coaches. But at the same time, that's not easy. It's not easy on an organization. It's not easy for you guys. You like to know who you're dealing with over time. Not easy for the fans, not easy for the players. And so when I look at the history of the Canucks, though, there's not a lot of coaches that coached here for a long time. I know Pat Quinn did. I think maybe Vigneault did, if I remember right. But for the most part, coaches are here 2, 3, 4 years. And that's unfortunate because you like to have somebody longer term.
I think that's the part that sucks about this. They had that guy in Rick Tocchet. And look, like, for all the flack ownership's getting, they were willing to make Rick Tocchet the guy. 5 years, $5 million per year. That is a big check to write, and that is the kind of check that you make when you want a guy to be here, well, evidently, for 5 years. Like, that is not something you take lightly. And I think that's what makes this a little bit of a tougher pill to swallow, is like, they had the guy. They had that guy. And now, I mean, look, I've given this more thought. I know I said yesterday that I was like, just bring Manny Malhotra up. You have to do it. Don't try to go get a veteran head coach. I'm against it. I'm fully against it now. I'm starting to think more and more about just like try something that you haven't done, and that's rebuild properly and see what you can do if you accumulate some draft picks and see what you can actually accomplish. But I don't want to see them go out and get a veteran head coach and really, Harman, repeat the cycle that you just said, where it's like there's hope at the start of the Boudreaux era, then there was hope with Tocchet. And I mean, hey, like Tocchet's the only one of these guys that I think got the closest to finding that stability, because I think we agree that a lot of things that went wrong this year were out of his control. Don't repeat the cycle. Don't go get another guy that is just going to repeat that cycle of here's a great year. Oh, but here it failed again. So we're going to have to fire him, bring someone else in. Don't just end that cycle. End the cycle right now. Bring in a young coach in Manny Malhotra. See what you can do with that, and then go from there. Don't make a decision right now and go get a veteran head coach.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with your take. But as far as actually creating that stability and having a voice in there for a long time, it requires results. Ultimately, that's if you're not winning enough in this league, coaches are going to get fired, or the GM that hired you is going to get fired, and then a new manager comes in and they want to make changes. This is a results-based business, and Rutherford alluded to how this franchise hasn't had historically a lot of stability at the coaching position. That's because for the most part, this franchise hasn't won a lot. Vigneault was here a long time because they won. Pat Quinn was here for a long time because they won. The buck really stops there. And I agree with your idea that I probably lean towards giving Manny Malhotra a shot for this coaching position. But whether it's him, whether it's a veteran that they bring in, ultimately you're solely going to be based off your results, wins and losses.
Let's bring in Jeff Paterson. Jeff Paterson, brought to you by Pacific Toyota dealers, who want to tell you about the 100% electric Toyota BZ4X, an SUV packed with plenty of space. The BZ4X can handle any terrain and can take you from the city to the slopes. It's backed by the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're driving a Toyota, and if you're driving a BZ4X, you get access to HOV lanes even if you're driving alone. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives, and now you can finance a 2025 BZ4X from 0.99% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Jeff Paterson joins us now. Jeff, thanks for doing this. What was your reaction to the news yesterday?
Yeah, not shocked. Certainly, I think there were enough warning signs there. The minute that Jim Rutherford said at that year-end availability that they weren't going to force a guy who may have his eyes elsewhere, right then and there, sort of my antenna went up. And even though they continue to negotiate, not surprised. It's been a day now to sort of process it all. A lot of what you guys just said there, I don't want to cover a ton of old ground, but just add my voice that this is pretty significant, that the Canucks put the sun and the stars and the moon in front of Rick Tocchet financially, and he still said no. And I exchanged text with Rick this morning. I'm not going to get into what he said totally, but one of the things that he did mention was that he's going to walk away with his head held high because he poured his heart and soul into the 2.5 years he was here. And I think that just tells you the toll, the emotional toll that this past season particularly took on him. And if 5x5 wasn't enough to keep him here, clearly it wasn't about the dollars and cents. It was about the chance to win. And I think, like a lot of people, he looks short-term, but he looks long-term. And there are just better opportunities for anybody in the hockey world to go and win. And that's ultimately what it is all about. If it was just about taking the money, then sure, he could have done it. But it's clear to me that it was the situation that was in front of him. And whether it was the uncertainty around Quinn Hughes, whether it was the idea and the uncertainty of dealing with Jeff Paterson next year and not knowing after trying everything to get through to him this year, just it wasn't enough. And so I feel like ultimately, when I look at the news of the day yesterday, I'm disappointed. Rick Tocchet was great to deal with. Fans don't care so much about the interactions between the media and the coach unless they go sideways and then everybody eats it all up. But I feel for the fan base because it just feels to me like this franchise is back to square one now, where they essentially have resided for the better part of a decade aside from last season. And last season is so clearly the outlier now. And here we go again, not really knowing or seeing. I tweeted it at the trade deadline. I just didn't see a path right now with this organization. And a few months later, now they're without a coach. And I still am at a loss to sort of see how they get from here to there, especially when the president has mentioned twice in the span of a week just how difficult the work is going to be for the management group to rebuild this hockey club back into some sort of contender status.
J-Pat, what do you think the Canucks should be looking for when targeting their next head coach?
Oh, I mean, I guess they were willing to go to significant lengths for Rick Tocchet financially, so that's encouraging to me that this isn't necessarily that they're going to take the cheapest option. I hope they take their time here and step back and assess ultimately their needs and the candidates that are available. And we know that there are lots of good quality coaches, but at the same time, the people that think that Manny Malholtra's lack of head coaching experience, particularly at the NHL level, should work against him, and it has to be considered. But look at the longest tenured coaches in the National Hockey League right now. John Cooper didn't have NHL experience as a head coach. Jared Bednar was forced into a tough spot late in the summer, the year that Patrick Waugh walked away from the Colorado Avalanche, and he's done all right for himself. And Marty St. Louis, with no pro coaching experience whatsoever, I think he's the fourth longest tenured guy now, which speaks to the churn at the NHL level. But if Manny proves to be the guy that they want, having worked in the system, familiar with some of the prospects, the lack of experience doesn't concern me. Manny Malhotra has been an assistant coach in the NHL in two of the biggest Canadian markets, both Vancouver and Toronto. This guy was a high draft pick, had a solid career. He's thoughtful. He processes the game. He's an honest individual. He's had great success down in Abbotsford. Spencer Carberry's going to be the coach of the year this year, I think, in the National Hockey League. Again, a guy that, worked his way up and got his opportunity. So this idea that you have to recycle a proven NHL head coach, I'm not sure that I go down that road for the Vancouver Canucks. And so if it is Manny, my only concern there, guys, is that they don't mess this up, because Manny's got a good thing going in Abbotsford right now. And if word gets out that he is the Vancouver Canucks guy, what kind of message does that send to the Abbotsford players who think that their head coach has a foot out the door for greener pastures? And so I think it's a bit of a delicate situation, because I do think that Abbotsford can get on a run and get on a lengthy playoff roll here. But the longer that goes, if the Canucks have their eye on Manny being the guy and other vacancies are filled around the National Hockey League, I just kind of fear that the way that the news cycle works, that word will get out that, yes, Manny Malhotra is going to be the next head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. I think that puts him in a tough spot for the task that he has right now, which is trying to drive this Abbotsford group forward in the Calder Cup playoffs.
You put it super well. Manny's obviously a friend of the show, having been on before. Look, I'm Team Manny. I've been saying it for a while now. Get me a Manny for president pin. I'm all for it. And you put it really well.
For president, or how about the pin should probably say for coach?
No.
Manny for president. Okay.
For everything. Yeah. You put it really well though. That you can hear when he answered even our questions. Just a super super thoughtful guy, and I think he thinks the game at a really really high level. So I'm all for Manny there. Okay. Speaking of presidents. Jim Rutherford, what did you think of yesterday's press conference, Jeff? Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, you guys were talking about some of the lighter moments, and look, that was not a light topic. Obviously, this coach who rebuffed the Vancouver Canucks and walked away. The joke that he tried to land about the practice facility being one of the things that hit was such a thud. Like, even you could see he looking around the room waiting for somebody to laugh at his joke. Like, that one hurt. Like, as I wasn't in the room yesterday. I had a medical appointment that I wasn't there for the press conference.
So that one, like, I'll just step in there too. I didn't realize he was joking because he said it in such a serious way, and it wasn't until he started smiling and looking around the room that I was like, oh, he meant that as a joke.
Yeah.
The delivery was off. I think
he was
I think the
appealing
tone
for
was
somebody to react to his joke, and it fell so flat.
He's unlucky I wasn't there. I was laughing when I heard that. Look, all stand-up comedians need to do their crowd work. That's what I'm saying. Get him out there more. Let him get his practice in. Let him get his reps.
You know what really jumped out at me, though, was this idea that they had approved another assistant coach for the Vancouver Canucks. Like, I wanted to see who was Rick Tocchet going to hire and what role were they going to carry out here. And this idea that Tocchet had already spoken about trips to Sweden to go visit Petey in his offseason training. And, does the new head coach, is that priority number one? Is the press conference held at YVR and the guy's going to get on a plane and fly over to Sweden? So I thought, again, he's revealing. He's honest as the day is long, as you guys sometimes too honest maybe. But I thought that was fascinating that they had already approved the hiring of another assistant coach. And Rick Tocchet had mentioned that, and he talked about the part-time thing maybe not working. But we'll never know where Tocchet was going to take that. But, will they expand the coaching staff under this new head coach? I guess is something that I'll be watching for there. And just good on Jim Rutherford for sort of taking us behind the curtain a little bit, where he talked about going back and forth, but really making no headway. And then a week ago, kind of going, what's going on here? Like, we're talking and saying all the right things, but we're not getting to the finish line. And so, as I said, when he mentioned that a week ago at his year-end availability, that's when I guess I saw the first real warning signs. But it was clear that in the last week here, something changed in the eyes of the president. They continued to negotiate, but it wasn't enough. So, he doubled down on just how difficult things are going to be. He talked about, and I thought it was fascinating when he talked about the new head coach is going to have to work with the star players. I want to be clear that I'm not talking about Quinn Hughes. Well, we know exactly who you're talking about, Jim. Like, name some names. But, again, I thought a fascinating answer there that if Elias Pettersson didn't already feel the pressure, they moved out the guy that was the obstacle in JT Miller midseason. And now the head coach is walking away here. Like, every one of these moves just heaps more pressure on Elias Pettersson in terms of his importance to this organization, for him to have the summer of a lifetime to come back here and be the player that people want to believe that he can be again. But until he proves it, there's still going to be these doubts. So I thought that was a fascinating answer as well, that the new head coach has to be able to work with these star players. And then, as he said, the star players have to win you games. We know exactly who he was talking about.
Yeah, and I think in the hiring process, one thing the Canucks should be looking for is what candidates actually have answers or possible solutions around that Paterson topic, because Paterson really is the key for a Canucks bounce back next year. Him and Thatcher Demko staying healthy and playing at a Vezina level again, possibly. So that's going to be one of the first things I would be asking potential candidates in an interview setting is, what's your take on why Paterson has struggled so prominently over the last 14 months? What's your theory? And what's your blueprint for getting him back to being a star player in this league? And that would also be really interesting from an information gathering perspective too. Getting the input of voices outside of your organization. So that's something that I'm really curious to see as well.
And to that end, I think, and we would never be privy, we're not going to get transcripts of these interviews, but I would think any prospective coach would know that question is coming. So what are these candidates doing in terms of research? Because they haven't worked with Elias Pettersson, right? Like, most of them probably don't have firsthand knowledge. They've watched like we have and wondered what's going on. 102 points down to 45 points. Like, how does that happen? So who are they talking to? Where are they going to gain intel and gain some insight on some of the things? Because I'm not sure that a prospective coach can walk in the door to an interview and have the answers without sitting down with Elias Pettersson and really getting to know him. And we know that that's not easy. Rick Tocchet had trouble getting through to him. Other coaches at times have as well. But yeah, I mean, I think pretty much any interview is going to start with that as one of the main thrusts. And, you know, you mentioned a Thatcher Demko. I saw Connor Garland was on the NHL Network and talking about whoever gets Rick Tocchet next is going to be lucky. You know, it's funny. I got up this morning and I tweeted about Garland because I was just thinking about Connor Garland and his time in the National Hockey League. And I remember talking to him at the end of his second year. He came back after the start of his third year, because his first year, he was here for 3 months and they had the organizational house cleaning, right? Like his first 3 months, he played under Travis Green. And then he had Bruce Boudreau as head coach. And so his first 2 seasons were disarray, and then the end of the Bruce era and all that kind of stuff. And so ahead of his third season out at UBC, just those informal skates, I had a really good chat with Connor Garland, and he just kind of shook his head and said, like, I'm so glad that, you know, the noise level has died down and we can just play hockey. Little did he know what was coming down the pipe in a couple of years' time. But, you know, this is a guy that came up through the Arizona Coyote system and saw the cheapest team in the league that barely paid its bills, and probably thought when he got traded from there that he had left his function behind and was coming to a real hockey market. You know, all through that, a global pandemic, a season with no fans, like Connor Garland's NHL career has just been so bizarre. And I thought to myself, all right, you know, he was a mid-round pick in 2015. So was Anthony Cirelli. And I'm not comparing the players here, but just their circumstances. Anthony Cirelli has played for one organization, one head coach, won a couple of Stanley Cups. I think he's played 120 playoff games. And here's Connor Garland, who has just put 4 coaches now in 4 years. You know, I guess the point I'm getting at here is, I wonder if a guy, and I'm not reporting anything at all, and I'm not putting words in Connor Garland's mouth, but if Connor Garland decided, as a guy who's going into the final year of his contract, that he wanted out. He wanted to explore, you know, options elsewhere where things are run properly. And like, I could totally understand that. I could understand that with Thatcher Demko too, even though he professed his love for the city. If Thatcher Demko wanted to play out his contract and just go explore, like Brock Besser should run as fast as he can. Like, forget, he owes the Vancouver Canucks nothing now. So this idea of circling back, Brock, go find another organization where you can win and win now. You know, NHL careers are short. And so, you know, that is the one thing through all of the dysfunction, we really haven't heard players wanting out, like coming right out and demanding trades. Remember, we thought about Garland at one time. He changed his agents. We thought that was what that was about. And Besser, his agent, was trying to find a taker for him. But it's getting to the point now, like, it wouldn't shock me if some players were like, enough of this. Like, the coach wanted out. I kind of want out as well. And we'll see where it goes. And so you hope that every time something like this happens, you hope it's rock bottom. But I don't know. I honestly, like, just the direction right now of this organization, it's hard to sort of see their way out of the wilderness right now.
Hey, it was hard before yesterday's announcement too. Like, I'm pretty sure we were talking about that, and hard to see the direction when we were still thinking, oh, Rick Tocchet might come back. But yeah, that's kind of ramped up a bit. And on Garland, I must say, I could just see Garland be like, just trade me wherever Rick Tocchet goes, because Rick Tocchet is Garland's coach. Like, that is the guy that gets the most out of Connor Garland. And you brought up the NHL Network interview. In that interview, I think we have it over on CanucksArmy.com. In that interview, one thing you said is just like, I didn't understand the game until Rick Tocchet coached me. And obviously we know their story in Vancouver and how Garland really took a step under Tocchet.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Garland has said that a few times, that, you know, he came into the National Hockey League. He was all about racking up points at a crazy pace in the Quebec League, but didn't really understand all assets of the game, being a pro, all those types of things. And, you know, demanded ice time in Arizona. And Rick Tocchet just said, you're not there yet, essentially. And so, you know, the two of them reunited here in Vancouver, and Connor Garland proved to this coach that he can be a, you know, 16, 18, up over 20 minutes a night at times. Now, some of that speaks to the depth around him in this organization, but nobody's ever going to question the effort and the honesty and the hustle and compete of Connor Garland. And so that's why, like, you know, I when I tweeted out this sort of career arc of his, I wasn't knocking Connor Garland in any way. It was just, what a bizarre sort of path it's been for him. through no fault of his own, just all of this dysfunction that he has had to put up with, not just in hockey, but in society with the pandemic and everything else. At some point, you'd just like to think that this guy can find a path that will allow him to put some of the distractions and the noise behind him and just do his thing. So he's got another year left on his deal. He's a Canuck for now, but we'll see how far that goes and how long he lasts here. And again, I just come back to this idea that I do wonder, and the players don't get a say generally. I mean, Quinn might get some say in the next head coach, but the rank and file guys, they don't. Their job is to show up at training camp and be ready to play for whoever is the head coach. But just think of, whether it's Connor Garland or Tyler Myers or Elias Pettersson, 4 head coaches in 4 years, that's 4 voices, that's 4 different systems. And even if the systems are somewhat the same, there are nuances and tweaks, and it's just a lot to process. And it shouldn't be this way, but it is. And Jim Rutherford can say, hey, I didn't hire all the coaches, but he is going to hire the next one. And so he'll be on the hook for at least half of those 4 coaches. And let's hope that whoever they hire is the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks for a bunch of years, just so that he can build a rapport with his players and us in the media and the fans and anybody else in the organization, because the turnover and the churn, it's just happened at a ridiculous rate. And the proof is in the pudding. Like, it's not working for the Vancouver Canucks. So let's hope that this is the last big significant turnover for quite some time. But in saying that, guys, like, Patrick Allvin's got to have a big offseason here and has to have a bunch of wins on the ice, off the ice over the next 12 months, because I think he's going to be on the clock. He'll be the next one. And that's just the nature of the business that they're in.
Jeff, great stuff as always. Thanks so much for doing this. We will talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Thank you.
There he is, Jeff Paterson. Rink-wide Abbotsford edition. Those are going to be starting up again with the next series.
Tomorrow.
So, yeah.
Series starts tomorrow.
And then what's the game 2? I know game 1's tomorrow. When's game 2?
Game 2 would be Saturday. So it's Thursday, Saturday in Palm Springs. And then they'll come back Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday if necessary in Abbotsford. Best of 5.
Can we go on the road? Let's just go
to
Coachella
Abbotsford? Oh, you want to go to Coachella Valley?
I mean, go to Palm Springs.
I won't say no.
I was thinking a little higher than Abbotsford, Jacob.
Well, I didn't think Palm Springs was in the cards.
It's on the table. It's on the table. It's on the table. Okay. Yeah, thanks again to Jeff Paterson for joining us. Let's get to our poll question, which is about management, and it is brought to you by our friends over at Greta, the home of our electric watch parties. Greta's a great spot to watch all the playoff games, and the Stanley Cup playoffs are on right now. Greta's got them on those big screens. They've also got the arcade games, the bar, and the street food menu. Make sure you try the Smash Burger. It's my favorite. Head on down to Greta today. It's a great spot to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. All right, our poll question. Put this out there because I saw enough angst about Jim Rutherford, about Patrick Allvin, and just about the current state of the Canucks. And I put it out there. I said, do you want to see the Canucks make changes in management? 54.7% of voters said yes. 45.3% said no. I am in the no camp. I don't want to see changes. It goes back to Tocchet, right? When people are like, fire Tocchet. And I was like, okay, who do you want to come back? People don't really have an answer. Who do you want to come run the Canucks? Who's your pick? Just give me a name. Give me a name. I'd love to hear from the people who want to see changes in management. Who's going to come in, run the Canucks, and make sweeping changes? Like, at the end of the day, Harm, I think the Canucks' current management group is the best group to take the next step with this team, whatever that may be. If it's a rebuild, maybe I say, okay, maybe go get someone else. Maybe Jim Rutherford doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. But right now, like, I look at this offseason, I say, like, yeah, I probably want Jim Rutherford in charge of it right now. I'm not looking for a change in Canucks management. And again, I mentioned this earlier, but if you go look at the replies to that poll question, it's just nonstop. People just saying ownership. Like, you need to change in ownership. We can't put a poll question out there, of course. That's not fair. So the question is, do you want to see Canucks make changes in management? And I'm in the camp of no.
I really believe it starts at the top. I mean, one of the biggest blunders for this franchise over the last few months was not selling at the trade deadline, which feels like there's been so much chaos and other storylines going on that we haven't even necessarily spent a ton of time talking about that. management can take bullets for that. And were they complicit in that? Sure. But ultimately, when I look at them not selling Brock Besser and Pia Suter at the deadline and then missing the playoffs, and the cost of, wow, those assets could have helped you land impact forwards this offseason, part of me looks at ownership and goes, I wonder how much of an influence they really had on that one. I don't primarily point the finger at management, because we know how much this ownership group is infatuated with the idea of just squeaking into the playoffs and the two home playoff games and what that means for revenue. To me, it really starts with ownership at the top. And even you look at this franchise consistently taking shortcuts. The example I always give is when the Canucks made that desperate last-ditch attempt to get off of the Beagle, Roussel, Eriksson contracts, when they could have just waited 1 year for them to expire, and instead traded the 9th overall pick, made the move for OEL. Like, to me, Jim Benning should have never been in a position to make that trade in the first place. Jim Benning should have been gone after that 2021 campaign where they missed the playoffs in such a disastrous fashion. It was ownership that left him there. Ownership obviously approved a trade of that magnitude.
Just about to say, I'm like, yeah, it wasn't like Benning had just free reign to go do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, and look at the consequences that has had on their cap situation.
So at some point, you have. Sorry, go on. You're spitting fire. I did not mean to interrupt you.
No, and so you look at the situation this management group inherited, Rutherford and Alvin. They were dealt a really tough hand. Think about it from their perspective. The cap situation was a mess with a ton of inefficient contracts. There was really nothing left in the prospect pipeline because Hughes, Paterson had graduated. Besser, like, yes, you had NHL talent available, but on the blue line, for example, in the Benning regime, what had they actually developed on the blue line outside of Quinn Hughes? There was nothing. And Podkolzin wasn't working out. Hoaglander's maybe the best, Benning era prospect that hadn't already been an impact player that ended up becoming an NHLer, but he's been inconsistent up and down. And we know that retooling wasn't ever really going to be an option with this ownership group anyway. So you're expected to fix the cap situation, improve the roster right now, fix the back end, and you don't have prospects really coming up. You don't have many trade assets. It's a really tough hand to work from. And again, that's not, I should also clarify, I'm not trying to make excuses for this management group because they've made mistakes. They've made blunders too. But you're at a point where the bill is due for years of taking shortcuts, for years of not being serious about actually building towards a cup contender. And the whole idea of, like, Botch used to talk about this. Pick a window where you believe this is our runway to actually contend for a Stanley Cup, and your entire game plan and blueprint should be built around that. Whereas for this organization, whether it's been this management group or the last management group, the blueprint has always been, how do we get back to the playoffs as quickly as possible?
No notes. Yeah, I said it. You're spitting. You're spitting. You're absolutely correct. It's one of the few times I don't have anything to add, because I think you just said it, and it's the reason that I even brought up the word rebuild today. Is just that, and someone brought it up, and I'm still not ready to talk about it. Maybe in a week, but someone brought it up yesterday. Like, just trade Quinn Hughes now. Just rip the Band-Aid off.
No,
I'm not ready to talk about it. I'm not ready.
You got to take a last ditch attempt at this point.
You're not on team rebuild yet, right?
No, because that means Quinn's going.
Well, okay. Sorry, this is with the premise that he's already going, and there's nothing you're gonna do to change.
Well, his mind. I mean, if you're, it's a long shot, but if you're able to turn things around next year from a tough spot,
so you got to go for it.
Contend. You got to go for it. You got to go for it.
I like it. I think that's fair. I'm not even gonna disagree.
And let's be honest. I thought the franchise was at rock bottom a couple of years ago at the end of the Boudreau tenure when they fired him, when they decided, we're not going to rebuild, we're going to retool. They made that trade for Filip Hronek, which looked short-sighted at the time. I was wrong about that. And we saw them turned things around really quickly, and last year had success. Now, massive long shot, and they had a lot of things go right, but they also nailed a lot of what they did 2 off seasons ago. So before we pronounce the Canucks dead, like it's not over to the point where we should be talking about trading Quinn Hughes. Like that's too dramatic in my mind.
I think you're right. I'm not going to talk about it. Someone in the chat wants us to. I'm not going to do it. Someone in the chat said I stand with Harman. I love it. People are doing it. Yeah, it's not a great situation, but it is still one that they can pull themselves out of, right? And nothing's really changed in the fact of like what they need to do with the roster. They're going to need to pull a rabbit out of the hat, right? They're going to need to go sign about 5 more Kiefer Sherwoods. And I don't mean go sign 5 players exactly like Kiefer Sherwood. I mean players that you sign for cheap and that just greatly exceed your expectations. But they also really need a legit top 6 guy, because at some point, the Kiefer Sherwoods of the world can only take you so far. And this team has a lot of third liners already. So they're going to need more than that. They're going to need to pull a rabbit out of the hat this offseason. Yeah, we'll see. Someone in the chat thinks you're older than I am. Calvin said you can tell who's a millennial and who's Gen Z. Harman and I are like 2 months apart in age. That's funny.
What
That's
year would
really
you? Funny. What's the latest year you could be born in to be considered a millennial?
95.
I think it's 96.
Oh,
Because I'm born in 97. I'm that weird in between where I don't really fit into either gen.
you're Gen Z?
Technically, yes, but I never say that I'm Gen Z, but I also don't really say I'm millennial. I'm there. I think people born between like 95 and 98 are kind of like, I don't really know what I am.
97 in 2012.
Yeah. So I'm technically Gen Z, but I don't know. I feel old.
Gen Alpha.
I'm 2000. I don't like being called a millennial.
I hate being called a millennial. Yeah.
Yeah.
No
see,
one
like,
calls you a millennial, dude.
See, that's the thing. You guys are couple years younger than me. If someone called me a millennial, I wouldn't be like upset about it. I just don't call myself a millennial. So there you go.
No, do you know why? Not to start this discourse on the show, but I have been called a millennial, and it's because everybody thinks millennials are lazy, and they lump the Gen Z, who also, dealing with and I'm not saying millennials are not dealing with this as well. We got a lot of millennial listeners, but like dealing with the highest housing prices of like, I don't know, forever, dealing with all this other crap. Don't start. I'm not going to start. And you know what? Come on over, millennials. You're in the same group. I don't want to start picking at different.
Yeah, I was going to say millennials and Gen Z are both in that same boat of sort of being screwed.
And Quad starting the generation war now that inevitably is going to break out in the chat. Don't worry. Hey, we're all friends here in our Canucks Conversation chat. No need to get on each other about what year you were born.
Big Hog Hockey said, this is Canucks Convo, not when you were born Convo, which is a good name. Good name for the show. I wanted to remind everybody, Victor Mancini going to join the show on Friday. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're very excited because people were asking like, hey, okay, when are we going to transition away from the Rick Tocchet stuff? And I think the answer is hopefully pretty soon. Obviously, we'll still talk coaching search and everything, but it'll be great to have Victor Mancini on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians, who won last night. They're back at the Nat for a homestand versus the Hillsborough Hops. There's a nooner at the Nat on Friday, May 2nd, a great excuse to get the weekend started early. Check out the White Spot Family Fun Sunday on May 4th, where kids get to run the bases post-game. And hey, May the 4th. It's May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. It's Star Wars Day at the Nat. For tickets, call 604-872-5232 or check out CanadiansBaseball.com. Okay, people throwing out different names of who they'd like to come in for coaching, management. I'm getting a little tired of this. I'm going to be honest. I don't think John Cooper's coming here. I don't think Jeff Gorton's coming here. Let's just pump the brakes on all of these names. But I guess I did say, who do you want to come in for management? But that's the thing is like
you did specifically ask that, Quad. So
yeah, but you also have to be
obliged.
realistic. You have to be realistic. Is Jeff Gorton's going to leave right when you're Habs, Jacob?
I put that in the chat to shut people down on that. Jeff Gorton's not leaving Montreal right when the team he has built has started to enter their window of contention.
Yeah. Now someone brought this up too. Co-GMs, you and me, Harm. What do you think?
we would run this franchise into the ground unintentionally.
The ground? What are you talking about? When's the last time we missed on a player eval? Okay, no Riley Tuft. I'm gonna have advisors. Okay, I'm not gonna get to just freewheel out there.
Yeah, I don't know. I know you're sort of obviously joking there, but one thing I've just realized in conversations with execs over years is just how hard the job is. There are so many factors and aspects to the job that unless you're in it day to day, you just don't understand how difficult it is to sort of make real-time decisions. A lot the outside influences from ownership, and it's a mess. Being a GM is so difficult. It's easy for us to come on this podcast and yeah, it is our job to evaluate what management groups nail, what they miss on. But actually doing the job is incredibly difficult.
Disagree. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. And hey, like, it's hard in this market too. Like, let's not shy away from that. It's absolutely hard in this market for a number of reasons. Okay, so there's some odds out there of who's going to be the Canucks next head coach, and one of the options is Jim Hughes, Quinn's dad. And Jacob bringing it up in our chat. He was a head coach in the AHL for 1 year and KHL for half a year.
In
There's
the
an
KHL,
option.
I did not.
Yeah,
expect
he was
that.
a head coach for Dynamo Minsk. Well, actually, yeah, that was the first year of the KHL as well. And it said he was replaced by Vasily Spiridonov in November of that year or October of that year. So he wasn't even half a year. He was there for like a month and a half, and then they booted him for a Russian coach. But there you go.
I've told the story before, but like I've met Jim Hughes once in my life. We like sat together at a Maury skate because anyways, long story. He was having trouble getting into the rink. I helped him get into the rink. We just sat and talked, and you can just see why Quinn is such a thoughtful kid. Why he's, and I call him a kid. He's older than I am, but you can see why Quinn Hughes is so well regarded, so thoughtful, and why people just have a ton of respect for him, right? So I really liked Jim Hughes. I really like him. So there's my pick. Manny, assistant coach Jim Hughes. There you go. Okay. Sorry, I'm just now imagining Jim Hughes being the coach. It's like, oh, coach's kid playing 30 minutes a night. It's like minor hockey, but it's like, oh no, he's actually the best player by a considerable margin. It would lead to some really funny situations if Jim Hughes came and coached the Canucks. Okay. Is there anything else that we have in the chat that we'd like to get to? We do this daily, the playoff conversation. I saw a tweet. Chris Knobloch is playing checkers. Jim Hiller is also playing checkers, but Jim Hiller doesn't know how to play checkers. Was the tweet? Yeah, I think this series. I said it a couple shows ago. I'm going all on the Oilers here in this series.
I mean, you were right the other day to say the Oilers are probably going to take this. I mean, the way they dominated last game, the way they've dominated since the third period of game 4, they've hit that elite gear where it just seems like the Kings can't hit their fastball right now. Utter domination last night. But I will say, Jacob, you cannot, whenever we recap our first round predictions, you got to stick with whatever Quads originally gave for that Kings Oilers series.
Oh, don't worry. I'm not letting them off the hook.
What did I say? I don't remember.
I don't remember what you said.
I'm pretty sure
Oilers
we all had the Kings.
No.
I think you had them in 7 and Harman I had them in 6.
I had Kings in 7 too.
Okay, so then maybe I was the one that had them in 6, but I'm almost certain, Quads, that you had the Kings. I will go back, and after the first round is done, I'll because we'll be a little more prepared this time around. I'll have a graphic set up, like what all of us did, which series we got right, which ones we got wrong, and then we'll do our picks for round 2.
There's a request in the chat for you to do a show. Can we have a show? This is from Don B. Can we have a show about all of Quad's Clip It predictions before and during the season?
First off, I could spend an entire week of 9 to 5 trying to go through and find all of those Clip It predictions and still wouldn't be able to get them all. And Dom, it's a great idea, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Most of them will be incorrect. It's not really worth the time.
Name two. You can't.
Yeah, because you make so many that we forget about all the bad ones, and you just gloat about the ones you actually get right.
Doesn't even sound like me.
I mean, the Flames are going to make the playoffs. Or...
Oh, okay. Harman even agreed I wasn't technically okay. Maybe technically I
You
was
were wrong, but
it,
in
just, it
spirit,
wasn't as
it
absurd.
wasn't a bad take.
Yeah.
in spirit. It was an excellent take. Although you know who doesn't talk enough about his correct take? Jacob just pulling the Lane Hudson for the Calder, and we laughed at him when that happened, and he just absolutely nailed it. So
I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for the official confirmation. We're at like 99% sure at this point, but
I didn't put him on my ballot because I don't want to be wrong. I'm just kidding. He was first on my ballot, just to be clear. Are we allowed to talk about? Whatever. We'll do our ballots another day when they're made public. Okay. Anyways, anything else that we wanted to get to? Tonight's games. Yeah, Montreal, Washington. I'm not allowed to talk about that one. Florida, Tampa. A lot of suspensions being floated around. I can't even keep track.
Okay, hold
anymore,
on. But before the Montreal Washington one, can you touch that series because you not betting on it hasn't helped the Habs? Jacob, what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, yeah, I don't care at this point. Look, Montreal is probably going to lose tonight. Is my prediction. I'm just happy they were here. They got some experience. They made the playoffs. It was fun. We got to see Tom Wilson and Josh Anderson fight on the bench. That's worth it enough for me.
Harman Stahl, I got a good idea. Just talk about the series.
Well, the other series I want to talk about briefly anyway is Leafs Sens. How funny is it that the Leafs piled up all those shots and chances and still got shut out by Linus Ullmark, and now it's 3-2 for the Sens. And I can only imagine how much pressure that Leafs dressing room is feeling internally. Whereas if you're the Sens now, you've got the momentum of having won a couple in a row. You've got, you're playing with house money, so you're playing free, you're playing aggressive. You're probably enjoying the fact and trying to exploit the position the Leafs are in, where they're feeling the heat. Man, I'm not going to get my hopes up too much until they hopefully win Game 6, because my fear is I'm going to get all excited about the Leafs blowing a 3-0 series lead and then they come out and win Game 6. But man, if they lose Game 6, I'm going to be licking my chops.
Harm, I don't know if you have the data on this. I don't think you would. I'm kind of putting you on the spot. But when the higher seed takes that 3-0 lead and then drops Game 4 on the road, when they lose Game 5 at home, like, how many of those series end up going 7 games? I would imagine a good chunk, because I think you're right. Like, when that lower seed is playing with house money, they win Game 4 at home to avoid the sweep and then go back on the road and take Game 5. It almost feels like that Game 6 win is inevitable. I know it's not, but it feels like that a lot of the time.
I don't have the data directly in front of me, so I have no idea. I wish I had an answer for you.
I know but and you kind of, it almost feels like, I mean, well, a good example would be 2011, right? Chicago falls down 3-0 to the Canucks. They take Game 4 at home. They come to Vancouver and take Game 5. And we know that series went 7 games, right? It always feels like when the lower seed falls down 3-0, that Game 5 just be kind of that Game 5 is kind of the key game in determining whether or not that series is going to go 7. Obviously, if they lose it, the series is over. But I don't know. That is just kind of my thoughts.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
I've been cooking this up for the past 5 minutes. Pour le pari du jour sur Bet365, j'ai mis sur les Canadiens de Montréal. Nos habitants sont déterminés à remporter la victoire face aux Capitals de Washington.
You just insulted the city of Quebec with that butchered French, probably.
That pronunciation was a little rough.
Oh, what, do either of you speak French?
Un petit peu.
So no one can say if that was good or bad.
Well, I know that the pronunciation was bad, but it's grammatically it kind of sounded right. I sort of understood what you were saying to me.
All off top of the dome. That's just what I remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
You weren't on Google Translate for the last 2.5 minutes.
Staring at a screen.
Aujourd'hui. All right. Aujourd'hui, the Montreal Canadiens are taking on the Washington Capitals. Right now, you can get Habs money line. They are the underdogs at plus 165 over on Bet Bet365. You want to get on the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs? At Bet365, they've got you. From game props, player props, totals, and the money line, you can even bet on the futures like series winners, conference champions, the Stanley Cup champions, and much, much more. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 90 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right. Giant Baby makes an appearance. We do have some French speakers in the chat, and it wasn't very good. Wasn't very good, the French. I took French in grade 8 too. Yeah, not great. Not great. I'll work on it. Aujourd'hui. I said that right, for sure.
Aujourd'hui. Yeah.
Aujourd'hui.
Today.
Yeah. Oh, really? No, I'm just kidding. I knew that meant today. Okay. We'll be back tomorrow. Do we have a guest tomorrow? Oh, actually, I'm waiting to hear back. We're hoping to have Kurt Milosky back on the show, Vancouver Warriors head coach. Hopeful that we can get him back on the show. So we'll see. Victor Mancini on Friday, but we will close it out there for my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Jacob Azar. My name is Dave Jelly. Thanks so much for listening of Canucks Conversation aujourd'hui. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.